Hello and welcome to the Whirly Bloke channel. Today I'll be doing a part 2 follow-up to my Squirt V2 build video. It's been a few months since I did my Squirt V2 build, and it's been a fun time fathoming out some fine-tuning and component changes to make this work exactly as I want it. I originally needed this for a commercial video shoot, and since then I've used it successfully indoors and outdoors. And inevitably I've made a few changes, so I think now's the time to tell you where I am with this. Now, the first thing to note is the tune and the components I used on this first build would have stayed exactly the same as I originally had them. But this is a quad for capturing 4K footage that needs to be as perfect as it can be. So any small jiggles, wiggles and other annoyances needed to be got rid of. If this was just another freestyle quad, I would have just left it as it was. First off is the FPV camera. Now originally I had a Turbo EOS 2, mainly because it was lying around small and cheap. But when you're flying around people indoors with stage lighting, you need to see everything as clearly as you can. And the EOS 2 was rubbish in this situation. I tried a few cameras, even a Caddx Turtle V2 using the 1080p HD footage, but it's got a weird sensitivity to jello that I think it's a feature of the Turtle sensor rather than anything else. So I eventually settled on a Caddx Ratel with a 2.1mm lens, which works really well under stage lighting and darker and less well lit conditions. And this is currently my favourite dedicated FPV camera. The next thing I changed was the receiver for an FrSky R-XSR. Now the XM Plus was okay, and I've used it loads of times before, and the range is about the same. But for some reason the R-XSR seems to cope better with penetration. Flying deep into a building with thick walls did cause a few fail-safes with the XM Plus, and I wasn't too confident flying over water. But I will be upgrading this to a TBS Crossfire very soon. I've pretty much upgraded all my quads to Crossfire now. Now the tune. Well, I've tweaked the tune and rates to suit my flying style, and I've left a CLI dump in the description below. And by all means copy this, but really smooth, vibration-free footage depends on the tune working for your flying style, the quad weight, the battery, the props and so on. But remember, this isn't an out-and-out acro quad. You're tuning for smooth footage and slow, accurate flying. I happen to like lots of expo, and keep an eye on your motor temperatures. They can get a bit warm. And tweak the notch filters if necessary, and use new undamaged props every time you fly. And talking of props, before I was able to get hold of these new 3-inch HQ ducted props like these, or the GenFan 75mm ducted props, I was just cutting down props like everybody else does. And I found cutting them with a prop cutter of any kind just isn't ideal. You get slight inaccuracies and the rough edges that need to be fettled. As soon as you start filing them down, you run the risk of getting them out of balance, and that's just more vibration and jello. I started cutting these HQ props and the KINGKONG 6-blade props with my laser cutter. And once it's set up, I can cut these in about 20 seconds, and there's no burning or swarf. And they are mega accurate. Other than the 6-blade props being a bit quieter, I've not found any real difference in performance and flight times. They look a bit cooler, and the motors do run just slightly hotter. Now the HQ and the GenFan props are readily available. I'm using those. The HQ props are good, but still require the tips just sanding down because they're just catching on my ducts. But that just may be my 3D prints. But these GenFans fit really well with no issues. If you do need to tweak the tips of any of these props, just push a piece of fine sandpaper between the duct and the prop and move them around to get an even finish. The HQ and GenFan props make the motors run much cooler, particularly the GenFans, which I now use all the time. And the other hot topic is hot motors. When I first test flew the Squirt with the T-Motor 1407s, they did run hotter than my other quads. After a bit more investigation, I don't think it's the tune or the effect of the ducts. If you fly without the ducts, they don't really run any cooler. These motors just seem to run hot, which I'm guessing is purely down to how they're constructed. And if you spend all your time flying around slowly, there's not much air circulating around to cool them off. I found they get hot pretty quickly and then just don't get any hotter. And I've flown loads of packs and there's no damage, and I've just accepted they run hot. Although you may want to lower your D terms if they do get too hot and tweak the notch filter frequency. So the last thing is stabilization. Everybody asks about it. And the answer is your fingers do the best job. The smoother you fly, the better off you are. Keep the stick movements slow but positive, and when you're flying straight, try not to overcorrect and move the sticks. Now, I've always been a pincher, and I've modified this for my Cinewhoop flying. Rather than using my fingers on the top of the sticks like this, I lay them across the front and use them as a sort of damper that I can push and pull against. Just smooths out the movement. And should you fly acro or angle? Well, it's simple. I recommend using whatever you feel comfortable with and delivers the footage that you want. You'd be surprised to find how many tiny whoop racers use angle to get faster lap times. Acro does produce better results if you have lots of turns because it's not bouncing back off the angle limits that Betaflight imposes. But it's only really good if you're moving at a reasonable speed. If you're flying very slowly, you'll struggle unless you're very good on the sticks. The trick is to fly faster and just slow down the footage. Angle can get you great results if you don't turn with too much angle because you're not hitting or approaching its angle limits, and it's really easy to fly slow. So don't feel embarrassed if you fly angle and all the pros say acro is the way to go. If it works for you, gets the footage you want, go for it. I've tried most of the post-production stabilization plugins. ReelSteady is expensive and it works well, but you do get strange zoom pumping effect on the footage when you're flying between doorways or trees. You can edit around it, but it's lots of work. CoreMelt's lock and load is much cheaper but has the same sort of problems. The open source DeShaker plugin for VirtualDub is the best, but it's lots of work and takes ages to render, but it is free. The GoPro Hero 7 Hypersmooth is the easiest to use because you just turn it on, but it still zoom pumps to a lesser degree and pans do look a bit odd for some reason. So I recommend smooth flying, lots of expo, try not to throttle pump and use Hypersmooth if you need to. If you've got lots of time and money, use ReelSteady or ReelSteady Go. Now, I've got some upgrades planned for this, like crossfire and a radical change to the flight controller. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and if you found that useful, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. And if it's your first visit, then please consider subscribing to the channel for updates. I'll see you next time.